Welcome to Big Blend Radio, where we celebrate variety and how it adds spice to quality of life. Welcome to Big Blend Radio's Quality of Life show. Today we have Jeff Nelligan joining us to talk about his book, 4 Lessons from My 3 Sons, How You Can Raise Resilient Kids. This is the second edition. He's also author of other books. He's also a military veteran. He's been in politics for quite a while too, and we're going to learn about that. Because I think if you're going to be in politics, you're going to have to learn how to be resilient real quick. Not everyone's going to be nice to you all the time, right, Jeff? Welcome.
Exactly, Lisa.
It's called the swamp for a reason, right?
Right. There's not a lot of niceness in the swamp. Agreed.
Yeah. Wow. How did you go into politics? Is that something you thought of as a kid? Because you went in the military, then politics, or let's get that part together.
Well, the foray into politics really began when I was about 7 years old. My mom was a big-time political activist in Los Angeles and associated with campaigns for city council and mayoral office, as well as for different initiatives on the ballot within LA County. And she always would take me along on canvassing. So 7 years old with a little clip-on bow tie and a jacket and khakis on, and I would walk for hours every day. And she would say, the reason I'm taking you along is because if you've got a kid with you, they don't shut the door in your face.
Exactly.
And so miles and miles and hundreds of miles of walking these neighborhoods all over the city of LA. I liked it. You know, my mom was an upbeat, positive, real leader. And so it just was part of the makeup through, elementary, high school, college, and then after.
Wow. So that's amazing. I mean, you think about, and then there's also like the Fuller Brushman, right? Who would go knocking on doors.
Yeah.
It's canvassing, but it is, I mean, it's really, you're knocking on someone's door. It's a stranger. I don't know how much of that goes on now. I know it still happens, but people are, nowadays we don't call people on the phone unless you know them. People don't answer,
Right.
So it's a different time, but do you think those are some life lessons that you learned doing that? I mean, getting out there and meeting new people, and you do learn from what your mom is saying and what the people on the other side of the door are saying, right? So did you learn at a young age communication, and maybe even things aren't going to go the way you always want them to?
There you go. Lisa, you hit it right on the, right there. That it's the beginning of resilience, because as with all kids and all adults, you're forced into situations with strangers in a strange environment, and you've got to make it right or try to make it right. And for kids in any age, no one gets a free ride. So every day is going to present a kid, and again, adults, with an obstacle, a setback, a trial, and they involve strange situations and strangers and tough endeavors. And the sooner you can get to the point where you can hit that obstacle and get over it or around it, the better off you are, because tomorrow there's going to be another one.
Yeah.
And rather than folding like a $3 suitcase or having the parent act as a snowplow, sweeping away all the tough stuff, the kid learns it on his own, and after a while it becomes reflex to approach those tough, unknown, strange situations and drive through them.
Yeah, I think that's important. You talk about this also in your book. You have like a section talking about, don't hide from, the reality of life. It's even in the beginning, you're like, hey, trigger warning. And I got the giggles at that. Because when I was growing up, trigger was a gun, man. Like pulling the trigger. Now everybody is like, it's so funny how words change over the years, right? And I was raised very differently in different countries with different, I grew up in Africa, and you learn things like limpet mines and what a bomb looks like and what a hand grenade looks like and what an AK-47 is. So these are real things, and you do have to learn, and it's in your face, and it's not, you can't play helicopter mom with those kinds of lives. And I don't think we actually can today because there are situations with shootings in schools. There's situations, go to Walmart and get blown up. There's climate change that it's got to be fearful for kids. So do you think for adults, you can't just, oh, keep positive, it's all going to be fine? You kind of have to work through this. And um, fear is a good thing, but you can't let it dictate you, right? So can you touch on that part with all these real heavy pressures that kids are facing, really? I mean, there's college and all that, but right now in this, like that communication between parents and kids.
Yeah, I make 2 points about that. First of all, you're growing up in Africa, and I take it with South Africa or
And
Mozambique or
Kenya,
somewhere
South
around
Africa and Kenya.
Kenya, then,
Don't go there now.
No, no.
Mm-mm.
But that experience is, it underscores kind of the things that are in my book. You grew up in, as you said, you'd use the word reality.
Mm-hmm.
That's reality. And, you made a way through it. And probably
Mm-hmm.
was that development of your own resilience at an early age, particularly around the things you just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Today, we talk about the challenges that kids face. And whenever I'm talking to parents and they start to bemoan, oh, the great, mysteries hanging over us, the great, bad things about to happen. I always say, my dad at age 15 was working a vanadium mine a mile below the surface of the Sierra Nevada mountains. And at age 18, he took place in the invasion of Okinawa.
Ooh.
And at age 19, he was patrolling the streets of Tokyo as part of the occupation force.
Ooh.
He came home after not seeing his parents for 18 months and took care of his father for 4 years. So when people talk to me about how bad or how hard kids have it these days, I think, you have
That's a
no
good point.
idea
Yeah, that's
how
a good
hard
point.
things are. Oh, and by
Mm-hmm.
the way, he grew up in the Depression in a small
Yeah.
town. So I think parents particularly, tend to elevate because of self-obsession or self-pity, these supposed challenges. We live in the United States, and you see it every time you go to a national park. For goodness sakes, you're on the
Mm-hmm.
road seeing real
Mm-hmm.
America every day.
Mm-hmm.
We live in the wealthiest, best educated country on the planet in the history of mankind. So, gosh, the sense of gratitude for what we have versus the idea that the sky is falling, it doesn't square up. So the second point is, if parents accept that, then of course every day is just going to be a weeping, self-absorbed march through all these terrors, when in fact, you grew up in Africa. I actually have been to about 90 countries, and probably 2/3 of them were third world countries.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to talk challenges every day. How about finding something to eat or running water? So the minute you give into that, then of course, then you get, like you said, the helicopter parent, the snowplow parent that's just got to somehow brush it all away. In fact, kids need to deal with it early on, because I'll tell you, Lisa, if the parent is pushing aside all the bad things that are going to happen to a kid and not letting the kid, he or she, deal with them, by the age of 24, that kid is sitting in the basement playing Minecraft, and the parent's sitting there going, what in the hell happened?
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, I think I was working since I could walk. Like, if you wanted something, you had to work for it, right? If you had a
Right.
budget for it, I wanted a guitar. So my mom said, you want a guitar? You're really going to play it? Well, you're buying half of it. You're going to buy half of the guitar. And I'm like, well,
Exactly.
I'm not an adult. She says, well, you see those windows, they need cleaning. Maybe the neighbors needs them cleaned. You're going to be the maid for a bit. And so I
Yeah.
did. I did yard work. And then I learned to like it because I had this goal. And then I did get the guitar. And because I invested in the guitar with blood, sweat, and tears, I played the guitar. I took care of the guitar,
Right.
So and I learned budgeting. And I was like, well, can I do double time? Can I do overtime? No, that's a lie. You know what I mean? So there was this balance, and it's, yeah, I think working things out. You have to work things out. It gives you a sense of accomplishment. I remember as a teenager, I mean, I went to 16 schools. We traveled around a whole bunch in Africa and England, all of that. And when Nancy had her
What?
magazine in South Africa, which, she was like the last independent publication when things got a little wonky there and we had to come home. But I was, one of the people working for her turned and said, because I was starting to act out a little bit, she needs more responsibility, which was completely the opposite thought pattern. And as soon as I had more
Right.
responsibility, man, I was in it. I was busy. I was like feelings of accomplishment. And I think that's something to strive for is when kids feel accomplished, they're going to go for more and they're going to take on bigger challenges. Is that what was it like for your sons? Because they all have done really well in life, right?
Yes, they have. And, I mean, thank God. And I will tell you too, Lisa, hey, man, I could get a call in an hour and one of them's gone south somehow. But that's the way life works. And I already know that whatever
Mm-hmm.
happens to them, they'll recover. They'll
Mm-hmm.
climb over the obstacle or get around it, even at the ages of 28 or 26. Uh, I like the way you kind of detailed your childhood because, that's
Mm-hmm.
how a lot of people did grow up.
Mm-hmm.
And those are eternal values, as you said, discipline, accomplishment, self-respect. Those qualities just seem to be a little bit extant today in today's youth. And we were talking earlier and I said, oh, the anecdotes,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everyone has them about kids. Every generation is banging on the next generation. That's from the time of
But
Socrates,
come on, that's just like, hazing when you go to college, but not the
right?
bad hazing,
Yeah,
I don't mean it
yeah,
that way, but you know what I mean? You've got to have a little bit of initiation, as we called it, that not hazing,
that's
initiation.
that's correct. But so the anecdotes and the hazing, but let's face the numbers. I mean, a
Yeah.
typical kid between the ages of 10 and 18 spends 8 hours and 47 minutes on a cell phone, on a digital device. That's more time than they sleep.
Don't
That's
freak me
every
out.
day. Yeah.
8 hours?
8 hours and 47 minutes a day, and that's not including schoolwork. Okay. Half of kids by the age of 18, beginning last year, have had a major depressive episode.
Mm-hmm.
28% of kids under the age of 18 are obese or overweight.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at the tail end, the oldest of the Gen Z, and they're really not ready to enter what we call the workforce, what you and I have been
Mm-hmm.
doing for many years. Surveys from Forbes and Resume Builder within the last 2 months have shown, these are big surveys of hiring managers at corporations of all sizes, from 50 people to
Mm-hmm.
5,000 people. And when asked about current college graduates applying for jobs in the last 2 years, they said 58% of the people that they had hired within the last year had been fired. 61% of the kids the young people that they had hired were consistently late to work. And here's the grenade, speaking of
Mm-hmm.
those. 35% of kids who came to an interview, their first interview, brought their parents.
No, don't, no, no,
Yeah.
no, 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 no. That happened to Nancy. Nancy, I call Nancy my mom, Nancy, right? That happened in South Africa with her magazine. She hired some, I think the guy went to school with me or something. We had two incidences of this. And she told the kid, you're going to go deliver the magazines, right? It was like a easy job. And she fired him because he didn't do his job. Because I followed and checked up. Did you place the magazines with the cover up? It's competitive when magazine racks
Yeah,
and all that.
sure.
He didn't do his job. And she warned him. She gave him three. And this is the one thing my mom always did was follow through. When she gives you three chances and
Right.
you do the third, you're done. I don't care. I don't care whatever it is about follow through. I don't care if it's good, bad, or ugly. She's going to follow through. So I learned that really quickly. So she fires him. His mom had the audacity to come and yell at her, to which she told her really, really colorfully how to leave the building. And then, so then the one time she hired another friend of ours, and he was pretty much driving me around, and I was in sales and everything, and I was training him, and his dad wanted to come work there, and she turned to him and said, "This is not good." I already had to go through hell because I was a kid, right? No matter what, I'm going,
Right.
if you're working for your parent, you're going to have to do 3 times as much as anybody else. You have to prove to everyone you're not there
Right.
just, as a token, right? And she told the dad, she's like, if I hire you, you're going to screw up Ian's, you're going to mess it up for him if you don't really help him, number one, and really perform. So she created her own chamber of commerce. This is in South Africa. So all her clients would come over on a Friday afternoon, and we had like a networking cocktail hour between staff and everybody at the magazine. And her clients would come in. It was her way of checking up on her business from what the salespeople were doing. And everybody knew Nancy sits behind the bar. He knew it. And what did he do? He positioned himself in Nancy's seat of power. That was her seat of power, you know? And so she turned around in front of everybody. She says, remember what I told you. Now, when you're fired, I warned you, if I fire you, your son is going too. Because that's the way it is. This is, you came on with that. So she fired both of them right there. Boom. Because he took her chair, and he would not leave the chair. And so she says, you're not lead, boom, you're out. So like follow through again, right? So follow through is a big part of this. But this thing with kids and their parents being involved with their job, I don't care if it's, at McDonald's. Oh, please don't do that. That's just so wrong. No,
Yeah.
no, really,
And
35.
so,
Did you get 35%?
right. And that's from 3 different surveys I forgot to mention or neglected. The intelligent.com, which was 850 hiring managers. So you've got 3 different surveys. You're keying in at that 35%, 1 out of 3 bring their parents to the first interview. And then you realize that, which is a shambles. Of course, these hiring managers are rolling their eyes. And then you've got virtually half, 5 out of 10, who can't even make it through the first year because they're just incompetent. So what I'm saying is you can look at all the generational, snark, but the numbers are there. You've got literally 44% of kids between the ages of 18 and 32 living at home with their folks.
But okay, so do you think it's
the numbers go on and on and on. So that was the reason I wrote the book, was because I knew even 6 years ago, seeing some of being around kids and parents for 2 decades, that this generation just wasn't making it happen. So hence the book, and the key thing behind the book being you've got to have a strategy for raising your kids, because by the time, and you may know this, Lisa, but by the time a kid reaches 12, you, the parent, have spent 75% of the time you're going to spend with that kid by the age of 12. And by 18, 90%. So if you don't develop these qualities, personal courtesy and confidence and resilience and ambition in those kids at 12, the culture's raising them. And what reasonable parent thinks that the culture raising their kid is a very good idea?
So you can't blame the cell phone. You see what I mean? Like this whole thing about the phone and playing Minecraft. It's like, hey, do you come home and eat the whole chocolate cake, or do you wait for everyone to sit down and have a slice of cake together?
Yeah.
Well, I will go for the cake. No, I'm kidding. But you know what I mean? It's about the education of, here's some triggers out there. Go find your trigger. You know what I mean? But society raising your kid right now is not a good plan. I think the village concept was good too, though. But what happened to the village concept?
The village is fine, but
choose your village.
It's community, it's a school, it's neighborhoods, and most of all, it's the parent. And if the parent is complacent when their kid is on a phone nearly 9 hours a day, that parent has a major problem, because he or she is completely disengaged in the child's life.
Mm-hmm.
And what
Yeah.
happened 15 years ago with that 8.5 hours? Where
Mm-hmm.
was it filled up with instead of staring at a phone, looking at YouTube and TikTok?
Well, and if okay, so not to get brutal on things, but there's that case that's been
It's
I
brutal.
haven't I know you you're in politics, so you can say anything. Um, Kids that are go in and do the shootings, right, in schools, you know. There's that case, I think it was the first landmark case, started in it was in January. I think they now decided to bring the parents into the case into the court over this.
Right.
And I thought, how do you not know if your kid is, going off the rails? How do you
Yeah.
not know as a parent? Like if I was getting wonky, Nancy would know, you know. So
Yeah.
it would I don't understand how a parent doesn't know if their kid has a gun, knows how to shoot a gun, is having suicidal tendencies. I mean, every parent's different, but I think a parent would tap in if they were not, if the phone wasn't being the parent.
Right. Right. That's what I'm saying. The culture
And
and the
and for
society
families
is on
going
the
through this,
kids.
I'm really, really sorry, and I'm not being brutal to them or the parents, but that is a really rough thing to go through as a parent. If your
Yeah.
kid did something like that or committed suicide, and suicide attempts during COVID was huge. And the bullying that happens, and the bullying, again, where's the parent? Bullying comes out of lack of self-respect. Bullying comes from fear. So what's going on at home where your kid's turning into a bully? They want some kind of attention.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm saying. That's why I say about the strategy and the key for parent engagement. And the 75% of the time, by the time the kid is age 12,
Mm-hmm.
that's why I wrote the book, because I thought, and the book itself, it's a 40-minute read. It's pretty
Mm-hmm.
loose and it's pretty funny. And as I said, it's very brief,
Straight up,
but
yeah.
it's a marker for parents, and it's authentic because in the book, I take many shots at myself. It's not
Mm-hmm.
some wonderland walk through how successful my kids have been. In fact, in the book, there's 127 words about what my kids have accomplished. And they're at the last page of the book because it's
Mm-hmm.
not built to be some kind of, my kids are so great and they've done all these things and they went to these great schools and they're in these massive commands leading hundreds of men and women. There's none of that. It's just, this is how they were raised, and it may be a good marker for parents out there who are curious to say, how am I going to pull this off?
Mm-hmm. I think it's great that it's straight up and quick to
Yeah.
read because I think parents are busy, and
Oh
it's
yeah.
getting. I think it would also just the society is um, has to come back to some values of family unity, and I think COVID was a very
Yeah.
interesting time for that. But now we're getting out of that, right? And it's kind of now it's an interesting time with remote working, and it's kind of an interesting balance and a lot of change. And so I think it's cool if your kids are part of the change. If they suddenly mom is home half of the week and she wasn't before, yep, you're going to get caught. Which is kind of
Yeah.
cool. you know
I wrote a book about right after well, in the midst of COVID and the absolute incomprehensible response by governments everywhere, the
Mhm.
lockdown, the isolation, the quarantines. And the book was called Your Kids Rebound from Pandemic Lockdowns, a parent guide restoring their family. And
Mhm.
it talks about what happened, the catastrophes, and the numbers. I mean, it's got 270 sites to
Wow.
literature from NIH, CDC,
Mm.
Hopkins, Pew Foundation, numerous medical and psychological societies. But at the same time, the other half of the book is about, this is how you can get your kid back to where he or she was, and even better,
Mm.
because the smart parent realized that, and you kind of said it, mom's around now half the day. The smart parent and smart kid realized at that moment, this is my chance to vault ahead of all
Mm.
my peers, because everyone's in this static lockdown isolation scene, and I can really boost
Mm.
myself above in all the endeavors that I do. And I've talked to a few parents whose kids did that,
Mhm.
but obviously vast majority just, retreated into their shells.
For parents listening right now, what would you say is a first step to get on track? I mean, obviously get the book, right? But a first step, like you don't just sit down with your kid and say, okay, now we're going to pay attention to you.
Right.
And here's my plan. This is what you will do. You will get up at 6 o'clock every morning.
Right.
No, but what is what would be a first step?
Great. I'll start with this. Our jobs as parents is not to build a relationship with our kid. We already have that.
Mm-hmm.
Our job is to teach our kids to build a relationship with the rest of the world outside the front door, the places, the successes, the failures, the Home Depot, the hardware store, the grocery store, the neighborhood, the church, the scouts, the volunteer opportunities in the neighborhood. The first step is you put your kid out in that real world, and at a young age, you give them tests.
Mm-hmm.
Here's an example. I wanted to begin this whole fatherhood thing by making those kids, all three of them, as resilient as we spoke about in the first minute here, as possible. An indoor mall, 3 kids with me. Saturday, it's seething. There's tons of people, strange place. Opened my wallet, took out 3 $5 bills, gave each to one kid, one to each kid, and said, go get the old man change. And the oldest was 7, the youngest was 4. And I said, it's not a race. Just come back. I'll be standing right here. And off they went, delighted with the task. And, they struck out at stores and had to go to other ones. The kid came back with 20 quarters in his pocket. They came back. They had accomplished a task of uncertainty in the midst of a strange place. We just kept doing it and doing it and doing it wherever we were. Then we would graduate. We'd be at a restaurant and I'd point at one kid, 6 years old, and I'd say, you memorize everything the family wants to order and tell the waiter or waitress. And then we're in a parking lot somewhere. Here's Dad's ATM card. Go get me $300. Here's the passcode. And so the tasks were graduated in more difficult, more of a scene, but that's the first step, is give your kids tests in the real world so that they come back satisfied and pleased with what they've done when they started out knowing that it was going to be rough.
That's cool.
The second,
it's like a game.
The second thing, and it follows along the first, is you yank the phone out of their hands and you say, there's going to be a new way this family's going to deal with this thing. And you sit down with the family and you say, we're going to put together a social media contract. And in my book, Rebound, there's 4 different prototypes of social media contracts. And you sit down and you say, we're going to devise that no phones at meals, no phones in the cars, an hour a day on your favorite platform. I'm turning off the routers at 7:30 in the whole house. And then you say, and I'm going to do the same thing. You're not going to see me with this thing in my hand, which is what I did when I was early on with my kids. I would never yank it out no matter what. And I actually had a real job.
Yeah.
I was a presidential appointee for HHS. And if I wouldn't pull it out, no matter what the hell happened, until I was away from my kids. So that's the second part. And then the third part is, and this is for younger parents, but parents of all types, 3 actionable items in a typical day. Like I said, number 1, no screens. It's over. And you don't say, well, and they'll say, well, it's not fair. Jimmy and Betty have them. Well, great. Like I told my kids, we'll celebrate Jimmy and Betty. Good for them. You don't live there.
Yeah.
You live in my house. Maybe their parents have lost control of them, but I'm not losing control of you. So the phone. Second thing is, and I did this, year after year after year. I mean, we still do it sometimes when my boys come home from deployments. We just walk around the neighborhood, 45 minutes to an hour. For a young kid. And I did this when they were in strollers. I mean, we had a stroller that held 2 kids, and I had one on my back. And an hour in nature, in all those wonderful places in a neighborhood or a park, you see it every day. You know how important that is to the human mind, even when the kid is like 3 years old.
Yep.
just feeling that sense of,
And actually knowing where you are, starting
right,
to build what a community is. And,
right.
that's really huge,
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. There's more than the four walls of the house.
Mhm.
There's God's providence is out there in all
Mhm.
its beauty. And then the third thing we did is we read to them at least 45 minutes to an hour every day.
Mhm.
Sat down either when they were hitting the rack and sitting on their bed or in the living room,
Mhm.
and we just yank out books and we'd read to them. Later on, when they got older, we just read together, all of
Mhm.
us, and as a family. Three actionable items. They don't take anything but time. And if a parent doesn't have time for that,
Mhm.
man, that parent's got to take a real evaluation of what they're
Mhm.
doing.
Yeah, that takes, TV seems to win. I mean, you'll watch, I mean, people sit with their phone and TV all at the same time and a computer.
Yeah,
Three
yeah,
screens in one, like, or a tablet. I mean, how are you? No, your brain actually doesn't work that way.
no.
Multitasking is a myth.
Oh, I know. Well, when someone says
It's
I'm
hard.
multitasking, I'm saying, no, you're not paying attention to me, and you're the one that called me, or you're the one that
Yeah,
contacted me. If you're multitasking, you're doing something at 50%. And if you're happy with
exactly.
that, God knows where you're going to be in 10 years.
Yep. I can always tell when I've made mistakes where what I was doing, it was like, oh, you answered a call and you didn't, you didn't focus. Every
Right.
single time it is that. And I have to go to myself like, why did you make that mistake? What was it that
Yeah,
you were doing? Oh yeah, I was doing that again. Well, maybe you should stop doing that and just get through, power it out. So it's the focus part is good. And I love that it's a family oriented task.
right.
That's really good where it's everybody's accountable.
Yes,
It's a way of life, a lifestyle, and
right,
good habits versus,
right. And that covers
shut
kind
up,
of,
eat your cookie, and go to your room and play on the screen.
oh gosh,
So,
it's unimaginable to me. But it's that personal courtesy that we kind of touched upon.
mhm,
Just being presentable, introducing yourself to adults with a handshake, looking them in the eye, saying Mr. or
mhm,
Mrs. Jones or Mrs. Smith or
mhm,
Mr. Voorhees, and then that second part, just that confidence, the confidence you get by
mhm,
walking around that mall all by yourself, looking for somebody to give a store to give you $5 worth of change. There's
mhm.
nothing like it, and it pays off. You know,
Yeah,
I did that again and again and again with these guys, and then of course, the real world will always gives you those great examples. My kid, the youngest kid, was 6 years old. He was in a mall at a birthday party, a bunch of kids, and these three irresponsible parents. And the parents left the food court to go to a movie theater, had with 13 kids, missing three kids, leaving them in the food court. One of them, my son, and then two other kids who immediately started crying once they realized they were alone. But my kid says, wait a minute. My dad once told me at a college football game, if you're lost, you can't see anything because you're about 3.5 feet tall. So what you do is you look for that guy or that girl with the stripe running down their pants, and that's a security guard
yeah,
or a law enforcement officer or a soldier, and you run up to that person and grab their leg and say, I'm lost. So
mhm,
these kids are bawling, and my kid tells them, look, we need to do this now. And they finally find a guy after about 2 minutes who hooks them up with the irresponsible parents. But the key was my kid didn't panic. He knew exactly at 6 years old, five and a half,
you had a
he knew
plan.
exactly what to do. So that's what I mean. These tests pay off when it
Mhm.
counts.
Yeah, it really does. When we first got to this country, leaving South Africa, and we moved to California for a time, and we were in an apartments, and because we were going back and forth to Mexico because we were actually moving to Mexico. Anyway, we've lived all
Oh,
over, but yeah, we thought our magazine would open between the two countries and we'd live in no, that didn't work. Anyway, you could give your bank account to Mexico if you want to do that and play permits. So we learned. And yeah, we learned. Anyway, so I had a friend because we also had have a band at that time, and we'd come back from a gig on New Year's Day, and we'd done a gig out in the desert in Anza Borrego Desert State Park. Came
yeah.
back, and at that point, there was all kinds of we were bombing Baghdad or something at that point. And We went in the apartment, and his stuff, all his gear, he was a bass player, Matt, he had brand new bass and amp for Christmas. And that was what, 19, 20, 21, 20. I don't know. No, I was over 21, 21, 22. We go up. I just wanted to take a quick shower, and I was going to drive him home because we're all there, and we hear this explosion. And we're by Camp Pendleton,
Yeah.
in San Diego. And I'm like, holy crap, Baghdad bombed us back. And we're like, what? Because it really was huge. Well, there was an explosion. A lady had driven into her carport, and something happened with the gas tank, and it blew up, and everything exploded. All the gas tanks, all the cars blew up, including mine. And his gear's gone. My stuff's gone. Just one after the other. All of our storage sheds, everything, everyone's stuff blew up. And then we're like the apartment complex, and we're just kind of, I think we'd been there 6 months, but we already knew who lived where, because Nancy and I are very observant. We always know, you need to know the neighborhood, you need to know who's what and
Yeah.
where. And through that, we knew there was an elder man that lived in this one court. And even Matt knew. We both looked at each other and went, we need to go get him out, because, and he was, not dressed properly or anything. We got that man out because he was really elder. And just, luckily the fire didn't get to the actual apartments, but it was just knowing who, what, and where, who needed help out to get them out in
Right.
case. And that's just about being aware and walking that territory and knowing your community, right? So having those things, and it's something that she taught me. You always keep your eyes open, man. Know who lives where, know what's what, be friendly to your neighbors, even if you don't like them or they don't like you, be nice.
Right.
Be polite, be the polite kid. And I think that kind of paid off. But then what was interesting is, people across the street put out chairs, because now everybody had to evacuate everything. So we thought there were chairs for all of us, the whatever victims, but not victims, nothing really bad happened to us. No, it was for them to sit and watch. How about that? That
Yeah.
was, and so that was a lesson. We're like, we just lost our car. We just lost all this stuff. And to us, stuff is tough. You learn that when you live in Africa, you travel. But it was like, wow, okay, you gotta step up and wake up to, this is a different world. So yeah, it was interesting life. But I love those tasks. I love those. And 3 a day, that's a good way to go.
Yeah. And just if a parent can pull that off, they build that kid who's self-aware and, like you kind of just alluded to, aware of their surroundings,
Mm-hmm.
situational awareness, just, being able to walk into a room and read a crowd. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's
Yeah.
examples in the book where these guys are in a strange place and they need help, and they know exactly who to go up to and ask, because
Mm-hmm.
they've just got an intuitive sense of who's hot and who's not,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know.
See, that's
And
exactly that. You've got to learn to trust your instincts. That's really
yes,
crucial.
and those instincts are developed over years and years and
Mm,
years of doing,
mm,
these tasks, and not having dad or mom plow the way ahead in front of you.
exactly. Exactly. Well, Jeff, this has been fun. Thanks for
You
joining
bet.
us. Everyone,
Gosh,
Jeff Nelligan,
just given here.
nelliganbooks.com.
Oh, thank
Go
you.
ahead.
Hearing your upbringing and your background, it's obvious
Mm,
you had to have all these qualities, because South Africa is not a rather dangerous place, and Kenya, and then moving here and then going into Mexico. So you've seen, as an early age, the age of 19, that you have to have all these qualities to thrive and survive in the
mm-hmm.
world. Those are the qualities I wanted in my kids, and those are the qualities every parent needs in their kids, because, again, at the end, you got 12 years to make an impression on that
You,
kid.
that's it's in closing on this. Um, the qualities are there. It's important because they were life skills that of survival, right? And you don't want to be in a place of survival, so you can't be living them as though anything's going to happen. But it's just being aware is actually just it's polite to be aware of who's
Oh
around
yeah.
you, surroundings and things. Um, so there's a survival part of it. It's about life. It's about learning to trust yourself as an individual, because anything can go happen. You can't rely on. If something bad happened, it might be me who has to pull everyone out. You don't know, or
Oh
someone's going to
yeah.
have to help pull you out, and you're going to have to help them pull you out. You don't know what's going to happen, right, in life. But the thing I've seen too in parenting is that parents want to be like Nancy and I are best friends, However, there's it's not she's still the mom. She still does the books, man. Tell you what, she will not let me touch the books. The business. You know what I mean? There's certain we have our even in our business, this is your thing, this is yours, this is what you excel at, that's what you excel at, but we have to learn each other's business. We have to, in case something happens, we take over. But it's so we can be friends, yes, but it's a lot of times I see in parents that they want to be, oh, my kid loves me.
Yeah.
See what I mean? And it happens especially in divorce, right? Oh,
Yeah.
I got the kids this weekend, so the rules are out the window. I want to be the good parent. I want to be the liked one. I want to be the friend. So I mean, Nancy and I are friends, but we're adults, and and we can actually get into a little bit of a tiff here and there. We're mother and daughter. It's going to happen, but you have laws and we have rules and conversations, and there's
Right.
going back to the plate, going back to the plate, and going back to the plate. It's not this oh, me, I don't know. I don't explain that, but it seems like a lot of times I see parents just want to be the popular parent. Is that?
Right. And it goes back to what I, said earlier. Our job as parents is not to build a relationship with a
Mm,
kid. The minute a parent tells me that, their kid is their best friend, I say to them, I say, look, they call it parenting, not childing.
mm, oh,
If your kid's your best friend, there's something wrong there
mm-hmm,
because you're a parent. You're not a
mm-hmm,
buddy. And if you're a buddy, that means you'll never make the right decisions to make that kid be able to stand up on his
yeah.
or own 2 feet.
Yeah, us buddies, when we were, our buddies as growing up, man, we were the ones laying traps for the parents to see if we could get away with it. We were the ones ditching school. We were the, all of that stuff. We were the ones, and kids together, they devised the plans of, how far can we push this envelope,
Right.
and buddies
And
is yeah, that's when you do the crimes together.
it's also, you also mentioned something, earlier about being able to make that decision when it really counts. We've noted in the beginning of the broadcast that all three of my sons are military officers,
Mm-hmm.
and two of them have been in situations very tight and very dangerous,
Oh.
right next to bad guys. And I won't describe anything more than that. Okay. But they're in those situations and they've got 45 guys that are looking up to them saying, what do we do, Lieutenant? And my kids always came through with the right answer. And why is that? Because they were trained that way when they were as in their Navy training, but also they bring a wealth of those kind of decision making and that kind of resilience to the Navy before they get in. So when things are really hot and lives are on the line, my kids make the right kids. They're young adult. They're adults. They're not even young adults. I can't stand that term. As adults, they make the right decision because they've been making so many prior to that. And so when lives and real things are on the line, they do the right thing. And that's key. Every parent would like to have that. I'm fortunate. And so, like I said at the beginning, they could go south and I know they'd recover. But that gets back to what you're talking about, really key situations, like you described in that explosion at the
Yeah,
apartment building.
yeah. Yeah, that was crazy. That was a crazy time. That was like, all right. Yeah, I think it is the instincts of decision making is really a big one. That's a big one. Learning to make a decision, learning to trust yourself. So even if you're going to be naughty as a kid, you're already calculating risk when you're doing something naughty. And like,
Yes.
I have a friend out the Commodore, he's since passed in Mexico, who was our neighbor, and his kids were brats and I was a brat. But he's, later we're all adults, and he's like, and I love his kids because, we pushed the envelope. He said, but that was you were already playing risk. You were already weighing it up. How far can you go? Can you trust yourself to even make XYZ happen? You know what I mean? And so, that was the thing. And he was like, you're also bored. If you're in school and you're bored, you're going to be a brat, period. So I think parenting and teaching goes hand in hand as well.
Oh, yeah.
The teacher is not supposed to be the best friend either. The teacher is not a parent, but is supposed, you know what I mean? So it's that same thing as well. So I think I got in trouble a little bit. As a kid,
Well, as you say about teachers are the most important people in this society. And
Yep.
next up are first responders, and next up after that are military men, just like, and women, just like my kids. Teachers today in any public school are dealing with the parents that are never there, that are totally disengaged, and with a culture that allows these kids just to be absolutely out of control. So teachers, deserve our greatest respect because they're so ill paid, and yet they spend more time with a kid than any parent does throughout the course of the kid's life.
True. That's true. And why aren't we paying them? That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Come on, politic man. Go fix it. Well, Jeff, it really has been a great conversation. I think we've covered a lot of ground today. So everyone, again, the book is 4 Lessons from My 3 Sons, How You Can Raise Resilient Kids. He's got other books, as he was saying. You can go to nelliganbooks.com. All the links that I talk about on shows, as always, are in the episode notes. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. And thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you for listening to Big Blend Radio. Keep up with our shows at bigblendradio.com.